everyone who can attend. And when we are done, we will send you a link to this recording and the slideshow. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we're going to, so you should be seeing the Google Drive. So this session is going to teach you a few things about Google Drive, which we do have at the university. Before we get started, I'm Corey Bauer. I'm an instructional designer at West Liberty, and I was a former teacher. So I taught social studies and computer science. And we have Donna Schuler, who will be moderating the chat if you have any questions today. And she's our instructional design assistant. And if you have any questions at the end or you want to ask us certain things, we have our emails here so that you can get a hold of us. So how this session will work is it's interactive and you'll be doing certain things throughout the session. So you'll need another tab open on your device, or you can use your phone or a tablet or another computer if you'd like. And you'll need your Google account because we're going to be in Google Drive. And you can ask questions at any time. You can stop me. You can put stuff in the chat. You can raise your hand with the Zoom control, and we'll just jump in and answer your questions as they go. So there are some learning objectives for this session. So we are going to demonstrate how to create and upload new files and folders, how to organize them, what are the differences between sharing, and identify things that are shared with you and things in a shared team drive. And then demonstrate how to search for things within the drive, especially as you get more and more files, and add shortcuts, and then how to change some of those settings to be very granular and specific to each file. So before we begin, this will be in the chat box. We're just kind of gauging what your comfortableness is with Google Drive, because it may be new to you and it may be old news. So in the chat, if you just type a number, how you feel. I'm a big fan of The Office, so I chose the Office theme today. So are you a Michael Scott? Are you a Stanley? Are you a Jim? Are you a Pam when it comes to feeling comfortable with Google Drive? Okay, we have some threes. We're wowed, but we're not in love, but we don't hate it either. So that's pretty good. And our next slide is why you'd use Google Drive. And this is kind of an important slide because we have Google Drive at West Liberty and we have OneDrive, which is a Microsoft thing. They do the same things. They're competitors, but they do the same basic stuff. So in this chart here are the types of files you can create in a Google Drive, but you can save anything in a Google Drive as far as file types. It's really a storage hub. So you can create and edit new files. You can store any kind of file, even if it's a movie file or a PDF or something like that. It's just storage. Because we have an education account with West Liberty, we have unlimited storage. So this is a really good sale if you keep a lot of stuff and you have massive thumb drives and you have stuff on your computers. Because we're an educational institution, we have unlimited space. But if you use a personal Google account, you're kind of limited to 15 gigabytes, which is still a lot, but you can fill that up pretty quickly. One of the benefits of Google Drive and all the Google products is it auto saves. So if you're going along and you forget to hit the save on your device, it's going to do that for you because it's automatically saving every couple seconds when there's a keystroke that triggers a new save, which is a brilliant invention in my book. Google Drive also works across devices. So if you're on a laptop, a desktop, a tablet, a mobile phone, it's all the same account. You're accessing it maybe a slightly different way, but it's functioning the same way. And with Google Drive, they keep coming out with new features. Some things work with Docs, some things work with slides, and so on. And so they keep trying to fine-tune that just a little bit. So we're going to get started. And so this is an interactive session where you will need a browser and your Google account. So once you've opened something and logged in, such as the Chrome browser, you're going to go to the Google Apps Launcher. It's also called sometimes the 9 black dots. And you're going to click on Google Drive. You can also, if you're already signed in, go to drive.google.com as another way to get there. So the first session of our first section of this training is going to be how to create these things in Drive. So we're going to create a new file, and in your Drive, once you get to that screen, on the left top corner, there's going to be a plus sign. And when you click New, you're going to have some options that show up here. And you can create any of these items. They will be automatically saved and created in your Drive, and they will be untitled until you do something with them. So you're going to go ahead and create a new file of any type, and it's going to open a new tab for you with that item. So I'll give you just a second to do that here. And if I go out to my screen here, in my Drive, if you click the new and you go to whichever one here, it's going to open a new tab and have something that's blank. In the next screen here, now that we've created, we're going to create a folder. So if you do the plus sign and this time you do new folder, you're going to have a folder that you can put stuff in, because we can get very granular with how this stuff is organized. So far you created a new document and we've left it open, and we're creating a file or a folder, and we're going to give it a name, and you can name it however you want. You can also upload something should you have it already on your computer. So it's the same steps, but you're going to upload. And when you upload in Drive, when you go to New, File Upload, it's going to go to the Files section of your device and ask you what do you want to put in there. And so you can click on any of them. You can mass upload if you want. So say I wanted to put all these PowerPoints that came from a textbook, I would just simply grab all of them and here, and it's going to be working on uploading those in just a minute, because I kind of grabbed quite a bit there. So you're just creating documents and folders at this time. So we're going to stop at our first your turn. So you've created a new file, you're going to create a new folder, and you're going to upload something from your device. And so I'm going to give you just a few minutes here to practice that. We're going to take this down just a little bit. And so I'm going to give you just a few minutes to name, create, and upload. You have about a minute and a little bit less than a half, and you don't have to create anything on the documents yet. You're just creating them, and then we're going to do something with them here in just shortly. Okay, as we wind down, we're going to move to the next step where we do something with these files. So now we're going to work on organizing something that exists there now in your drive. So you can move files and folders into each other and reorganize all day long in your Google Drive. So on the left side of your Google Drive, you have some options down here, and they're going to have these little tiny arrows, which are indications that there's an accordion file and it's going to expand or collapse. So your default setting is to show you My Drive, which is stuff that is your items, and you can move them into subfolders as you create them. And there's, as far as I know, not a limit on how many folders that you can have in your My Drive. And I don't think that there is a limit on how many items that can be in a folder. And you can have folders within folders depending on how comfortable you are with nesting. But a good rule of thumb is you don't want to click more than once or twice into a folder, because it does get a little cumbersome when you're looking for something. So here's a screenshot of me dragging a file that has been uploaded to my drive. And when you click and drag at the same time, when I hover over something that it can go into, it's going to highlight. So for instance, I was grabbing and holding this file, and when I came over here, as my mouse moves, your mouse is going to get an indication that it can be dropped there, and then I can let go. And if you mess up, you can just move the file to another folder, however you want. So you can have these. This indicates that there's actually another file within this file here. And if I hovered over it and gave it just a second or two, it would pop down and you would see the substructure. So there are multiple ways to nest. I can also favorite something. So if you have a document that you're going to be using a lot, or a folder, when you right click on the item, the file item or the folder, you can have this pop-up window with what do you want to do with it. So you could organize it. And when you hover over organize and this arrow indicates there's going to be a side pop out something, I'm going to add it to starred. And so what this does is it kind of is like a favorite, just like in Sakai, we have the stars on your favorite courses. It's going to be in another list. So in your drive, when you have something that is starred, it will just pull you up all the items that you have starred. So it's kind of like your top hits or your top favorites. So these are things that I frequently use that I've starred. So I can quickly find them. Even though I may know where they are in a folder or in my structure, it brings them to the top of the list and it kind of hides the rest of my drive, which I find very helpful. Another thing that you can do is you can color code things. So if you're like me, you have some things where you want to see a certain color because they're grouped that way. For my instance, when there are courses I'm working on in development as an instructional designer, I have the files color coded so they stand out in my drive and I can quickly see through the list which is the one I'm going to be using quite often. I may not want to star it, but I definitely want to see it in my list. And you have quite a few colors to choose from. So if you go right click a folder or a file and the organize comes up again, this time you can scroll down to choosing a color. And so if I jump back into my drive to show you how this looks like, if I go back to my drive, this is going to show me everything that's in my drive, but things that are yellow are the files of the courses I'm currently working on. So I can see everything, but it's kind of like an indication to me that that's the one I'm using because I've kind of made it gold. So it's like a gold star. I can see visually. Another very helpful organization tactic is that you can favorite them. These are your stars. And so when you go to the organize, you've made a star and you click the start over here, it pulls it up just like I showed before, which is also very handy. So you can have something that's starred and color coded if you wanted to. So it really is helpful in how granular you want to be in your organization. Something people don't know is you can also use emojis. So if you wanted to rename your folder, so for example, I have images here. I found an emoji and I put it as part of the name. So if you want to go to getamoji.com, and I will put this in the chat so you can grab a hold of it. Emoji.com. If you open chat, they'll take you right there. And so you can copy an emoji and add it as the name of your folder. So if I back out here, I go to getamoji.com. I'm going to grab something like, say, a book or something that would, if I had a folder about book stuff, I'm going to show my whole tab here. If I say I want a book, and I'm going to, let's say a blue book. I'm going to click on the emoji that I want. I'm going to click copy. When I come back over to my drive, say I want to change my PD folder, professional folder to a book, I'm going to right click it and I'm going to rename. And this box is going to pop up where you can name your folder in any way you want. I'm going to click beside it and I'm going to do Control V and paste my emoji and click OK. And now you see it disappeared. That's because it has an image. So if my folder or my drive is sorted alphabetically, I have an image up here with this folder. So it kind of put it up at the top. So you could use this if you had folders about books or you have a folder about test. Maybe you find a test emoji. Maybe you have images. So I used a camera on mine. Any emoji you can find, you could add to your thing as another layer of organization that's unique to you. So what you're going to do, we're going to do the now it's your turn for 3 minutes. You're going to move a file into a folder. You're going to favorite any folder. You're going to color code something. And if you have an emoji you'd like to use, go ahead and rename that folder with an emoji. And as our timer winds down, you're finishing up these tasks. If you have any questions, remember you can interrupt me talking or put it in the chat, or you can use your raise your hand in the Zoom tool. I'm going to stop this just a little bit early, and we're going to go to the next section. Is there any questions so far? Are we still hanging on? We've done very basic things. We'll just keep chipping away. Donna, do we have any questions in the chat? No?
No questions, no.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to sharing. And these are one of the most important sections of having all these files in your drive, because this is where kind of the meat and potatoes are. When you have stuff in Drive, there are different roles of how you can share. So by default, whoever creates an item is the owner, and they have total control over the item. They can delete it, they can move it, they can rename it, they can share it, they can turn on controls whether people can make comments, or whether they can actually edit the file or just make suggestions and have kind of like a side conversation, like especially on a document. If you're an editor, it's basically the owner has shared the file or folder with you, and you get all the same permissions. But at any time, the owner can kick an editor out. If you're a commenter, you can see the items, you can talk about it and make comments on the side of the file when you open it, but you can't do much else with it. It's sort of, kind of like a grading scenario. If you were faculty, you could just kind of comment on somebody's work. And if you're a viewer, you can see, but you can't touch anything. So this is most often the role that people give when they've created, a PowerPoint or a slide presentation or, final instructions for a Google Doc, like an assignment. You can see with the link, but you can't do anything with it, so you can't mess anything up. By default, anything you create is automatically private, and it's up to you as the owner to give these granular sharing permissions to each file or folder individually as you go on. And we're going to get into those. So to change the share settings of a single item in your drive, wherever it is, if you click on it, you're going to see at the top of your drive that something is selected. So if you just have one item selected, it'll have a counter here, and this toolbar will pop up. You want to click the head with the plus sign indicating you're going to add a human account to this to see it. So when you get to this pop-up window, it's going to have the default person who is the owner. And so you can see owner here, it's grayed out, in the account that I'm in. Right now, it's restricted, it's private, nobody but me can see this item. But I would want to change that. So if you start typing in names here of the Google account associated with it, so for most people's accounts, they have their first and last name, especially with West Liberty, because that's how we've set it up. But if you have like a department Google account that you want to share it with or something, whatever you start typing here will pop up with what your options are. And most of it's going to default to who you've most recently contacted through your Google Apps, through email or sharing documents and such. When you've typed in a name, you get to choose their role. So you have the viewer and the commenter and editor, and it kind of gives you a little bit more warning here that if you're going to allow them to edit, they can delete it all or change it all. And there's some other options here. So you can add a view time where I want this person to be able to see it for just a little bit, but not all the time. So this is where your expiration date comes in. So maybe you're working on something, you want feedback on it, but just for a short time. And then when that time passes, that access is removed from that user and it goes back to whatever the settings were before. If you created something and say you have a bunch of test questions with answers that are going to be put into Sakai at some point or used in a class, but you're leaving the institution and you need to give it to someone in your department, you can actually transfer ownership of that file to someone else, which is just like handing them the file and walking away. Once you give it to that account and you click the OK, you no longer have access to it. So this is a good way to transfer someone's ownership of something you don't want anymore. And once it's transferred, it's transferred. They can give it back to you if they choose, but you've lost access. Or say you've given something access to somebody, but you just want to yank it back. Maybe they've made too many changes or you got into it with them for whatever reason. You want to remove the access. You just cut them off completely. That file is gone from their drive. They cannot see it anymore. You've closed the doors. That's remove access. So whatever you set now, you can change later. So that's okay. And so as you add one or more people, this list will grow and you can have this restricted. So, right now it's private, but you can also just open it to anyone. So if your default is restricted, only you can see it, because we're a institution under a domain, all the West Liberty accounts are together, we could open it to anyone with a West Liberty Google account. So if it was instructions on how to log into something, or some kind of training that multiple people might need, you might want to go ahead and open it to everyone in the institution. If it was something you wanted to share out into the world with anybody with a device connected to the internet could see it, such as, a flyer for a fundraiser or, something, anyone with a link could be open to anyone. So that means anyone who has this link, whether it's been, shared through email or social media, they could get to this file. So you have quite a bit of options there. And then if you do that, there's a button here that gives you the nice link so you can go and put it in social media or wherever you want. And when you're done with these settings, you click done. And that's how to share a single thing very granularly. Now, as you're out there sharing in the world, people are sharing with you. And so Google Drive divides this a little bit. So you have My Drive, which is stuff you own and you decide what happens to it. But there's stuff coming into you that you may not know where it's going. So in your drive, the shared with me is all the stuff that at some point has been given access to your account. So it will default. You can sort this by what the name of the file is or who it was shared by. So you want to see everything, if everything that Richard shared with me, I wanted to sort it, or the time that it was shared with you. So in this scenario, it's the most recent items of things that have been shared with my account. It also keeps track of things that you have opened. So say you opened a link that was out there in the world because someone made the sharings, anyone with a link could access, like in a training, so to speak, or something on a website. It will keep track of that stuff too. So I've opened some things from other people. Now you get into things where you're sharing with a group of people. So the catch with a Google account is you own all your stuff. And if you share it with other people, great. What happens if your account is closed? For instance, you've left the institution and we close your account down because we don't need it. That means everything that you owned has also gone with you. So all the files that you might have created for your department, the shared exams, presentations and stuff, it would be gone from your teammates. So there's a solution with Google called shared drives, and that is indicated by the multiple head icon here. What this is when you put stuff in, you create a shared drive and share it with certain other users. No one is really the owner. And I know that sounds a little weird, but you've given ownership to this shared drive rather than an individual. So if an individual of the shared drive leaves, everyone still has that item. It's kind of like having a file in a cabinet that everybody could get to in the lobby of your office or something. So it's kind of a way for departments to be able to create stuff without losing it if you have people in and out of the department. And so what this would be used for is if you have templates of your designs, like we have templates for trainings, if you had meeting agendas you wanted to put in there, if there were rubrics your department created, you have common assessments, whatever a team might need, a shared drive would be the solution. So this is kind of a storage place that belongs to a team and not the individual. And so when we have shared drives, earlier I showed you a chart that had shared roles. Shared drives have something similar. So you would have a manager who gets all the choices, just like they would in an office. You can have people who get content manager who gets to add certain things or not. You have people who can contribute but not take away. You have people who can see and comment but not necessarily change stuff. And then as always, you can have people who can see but may not touch. So if you're going to put things in a shared drive, there needs to be some thought about what you're putting there, because you will lose some control as an individual because you're not necessarily the owner. Multiple people are the owners. So really a shared drive is for stuff that's kind of in its final form in a way that you're letting the team have a copy of that they can always access. Once you have all this stuff going on, now you got to find stuff, right? And sometimes that gets a little hard. When you're in Drive, you may already have stuff that's sorted alphabetically, sorted by time. You have favorites, you have your color codes, you have your emojis. But what if you're searching for something a little more specific? When you're in the top bar of Drive, when you click there, it's going to pop up the most recent people of items that you've opened and had the most frequent work with. So here, obviously my work is there, and then some of the people that I work the most closely with are there. But it also has types of files. So if you know you're looking for a very specific spreadsheet of something, you at least can narrow it down by a type. And when you do so, you can get even more specific. You know it's a type, you think you remember who it was, or you remember certain words of it, you had an idea what the date was, whatever pieces of criteria you are trying to search with, Google has it here for you, and you can search and it will show you all the results that match these criteria, which is very helpful. If you know where it is, it was in a folder, maybe you accidentally moved it into a folder that you didn't intend to, and you're trying to find it, you have this whole search feature built in, which is very nice. And one of the things Google does the best. Now, some things, you know where they are, they might be nested kind of deep, and you want to share them, you want to organize them the way you want, but it's organized by somebody else because it was shared with you. So there's a little cheat called a shortcut. If you have things that are shared with you, but you don't necessarily organize them that way in your brain, you need it to be somewhere else in a different folder because that makes sense to you, you can organize how you get to it in your drive without changing the organization structure of the person who owns it. It's called a shortcut. So if you go to Shared with Me and you find an item you want to move to a different way, you right click and organize, but you're going to add a shortcut. That means you can add it to a different folder or somewhere else that makes sense to you without bothering the person who owns it. So this is very helpful when you start working with shared stuff and you're thinking about things in a slightly different way. So this section was a little bit harder. So what you're going to do is you're going to share something with somebody else. And if you want to share with somebody in this training session, you can. You can check to see if something's been shared with you. And you can see if you are part of a shared drive, because you may be, but you may not. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to look at that. And as this one winds down, I'm going to cut off the last minute because I want to make sure we respect everybody's time because we do have one more section to go to. The next section is maintenance. So you have all these files, you address the sharing issues, but now how do you use it day to day? So you may be able to find things or like to see things in a different format. If you are in your Google Drive and there's two little icons up here by your account, you can toggle between them and change how you see your files or folders. If you want to see a list, which may be the default setting for you, you just see a name of all these items in your section here. But what if you know what something kind of looked like, especially like on the first slide or the first page, and that's how you're trying to find something? You can change to this thumbnail view. And then so in my folder here, I took the list, but I see like the beginning of each page or each item. So if I have a PDF or I have an image or I have slides, I can see kind of the first thing, and it kind of helps me see what I'm looking for. So that's a good way to search for things that you kind of knew what it was, but you didn't have some of the search criteria that you had before. You kind of just had a visual memory. You can also change how things look in your drive overall. So above the display toggle, there's a gear wheel, and there's some settings here that you can change and customize. So it's going to pop up a window where you can see how tightly something is. So if you're okay with seeing, very small entries and you see more on a page, you might want it to be compact. Or you might want to be comfortable and you want some space between the listings of items or the thumbnail images, just preference on how you see visually and what you prefer. You can also have your settings to, if you're uploading things you've made on a document, you can upload Microsoft Word and stuff like that. But what if you want them to be in the Google format so you can get some little additional features? You can check this box that everything you add that's a spreadsheet, a Word document, a presentation would automatically convert to the Google version of it. So slides and docs and sheets rather than Microsoft spreadsheets and PowerPoint and so on. But that's totally up to you. You can also decide how you want to be notified when things happen in your drive, especially if you are sharing lots of documents and working collaboratively with people. So in the settings and the notifications, if you want to get notified that someone made a comment on your file or changed something or added someone to the file through the sharings, you can either get them through a browser, like a little notification on the bottom, or if you wanted to get emails, so you don't necessarily have to deal with it at that point, or you don't want to be bothered while you're working, that's up to you. Or through Google Chat, if that's something that you use among your team. You can also choose to have some of these little add-ons, and Google's kind of going very, very into the weeds with this, with some things that are very helpful that you may not have thought of. You have this side panel, and you may or may not see it depending on how you're looking at your drive. But if you are, we'll go back to my drive. If you're in your drive and you have this little arrow down here on the bottom right, I can hide it or I can see it. And so what it does is it has some of your other Google apps that may be preferable to you as you're working. So if you're working on a document and you want to, talk about maybe ideas for the next meeting time, you can pop out your calendar and it's going to open a side panel where you can see a calendar and your drive at the same time, which is helpful if you are wanting to schedule something or you're talking about something in an agenda, you can see it. So I can see what I got going on in my today. If you are someone who takes notes in Google Keep, which is a whole nother wonderful app that Google has where it's basically post-it notes, you can have all the things that you're working on in your post notes and you can drag them in here or somehow reference them while you're working with something in your drive. And then there's kind of like app smashing. If you're someone who uses tasks of things you need to do that aren't necessarily on your calendar as like timed events, I have these things that I just need to check off whenever I do them during the day. I can see that as I'm also seeing my drive. And then contacts, if you want to share it with somebody or you're forgetting someone you need to share or give access to something too, it's going to pull up your most frequent contacts here that you can also see, and you could add them. Now, if you want more things, there's a whole marketplace of stuff that you can add. And so some of the things, if you're doing flow charts or, kind of post-it notes, you need to build forms, you want to use ChatGPT. There's so many things that Google is now putting out there that work with your drive or the items in your drive specifically. So this is organized by the app or the tool. And so there's all kinds, and you can spend hours looking through what you might want to use in there. So back on our presentation, you have your side panel, and so there are multiple things in the marketplace that might be helpful for you for productivity. And so some of those things are, when you click the plus sign, you have this window here. You can search with what works with Drive or Docs or whatever. And then you can manage what you allow to work with your drive. And if you decide it's a tool you don't like, you can take permission away, just like you would a file with sharings. So here's some of the ones that I have enabled to my account. Some of them might be the most default one. So although it may be hard to see, this is Cami. This is where I can open PDFs and write on them or sign them or whatever digitally, so I don't have to print and sign and then scan back in. There's DocHub, which does a similar thing, and some other tools that are very helpful. Now, one of the big questions is, if you use Google Drive, you can use it on basically any device. So if you are logged into your Google account on whatever device you're using, whatever you do on one device is going to appear on the other device. So with that auto saving, if you give it every couple seconds, it's going to update, especially if you're a fast typer. But Google Drive works on your desktop in a browser, it works on your laptop. If you have the app for, your iOS or your Google products, Android, you can use it on a tablet or your phone. I have Google Drive on my phone, so I can open my PDFs and my documents and stuff when I'm on the go. And you can have more than one account signed in on each of those devices. So here's a screenshot of when I click on my face in a Google Drive or whatever Google file I'm in. My default one of what I'm currently in, and whoever owns that file I'm working on, is my default. But I have other accounts that I might be jumping into, like your personal one, you might have a department one. I can toggle between those pretty easily and then go to that drive or to that slide or to that doc and work without ever having to log in and out. So it's a very helpful setup. It's just you need to be careful about which account you're in, because sometimes you may think you had access to this, but you were in the wrong account, so you just need to toggle. So it is a blessing and a curse in that way. Now, sometimes you're going to delete stuff because you don't need it anymore, and you do kind of have a catch. You have 30 days to get it back. So if you right-click and delete something, it's going to go to your trash, but your trash can will not empty itself until it hits a certain time. So for your items in the trash, they're going to sit there for 30 days as a rolling 30 days. When that item was there, it has 30 days and then it'll disappear. So if you accidentally trash something, you do have a month to figure out that you've trashed it and get it back. You can restore it and it'll go back to where it was. But things that are older, they're kind of out there. Now, there is a caveat because we're an educational institution with a Google account. Depending on some of the settings, IT, there may be a way for things that have been older to be resurrected. But that's something you'd have to work with IT if they have that set up, about how far can they go back, because they have a trash can that then gets emptied. So there is sort of an asterisk with this trash. And you also have storage, but some accounts have limits. We are an educational institution, so we have unlimited storage, which is awesome. So you have 60 gigabytes of stuff in there, great. If you have a personal account, Google limits you to 15 gigabytes, which is still pretty big amount. But once you hit that threshold, it won't save anymore. And so they want you to buy more storage. So if you noticed on your drive, this little number down here, it just tells you how much you are currently using. And it's for all of your Google stuff to your account. So your drive, your email, if you have anything in photos, it's kind of giving you a breakdown of where some of your stuff is. Now your photos, if you have any, are going to take more space. If you have videos, they're also going to be very big spaces. But your documents and presentations and stuff, they tend to be pretty tiny. If you have a habit of keeping files emailed to you in the email that it was sent, it's harder to find those files, but they are also taking up space. So an easier thing is to attach them to Drive where it's easier to search rather than searching through the email for that one specific attachment. So we're going to do our last, it's your turn. You are going to check your toggle display back and forth if you want to see a thumbnail or the list. Set your notification settings to however you prefer them. You can see if there's any tools in the side panel that you would want to add from the marketplace. Maybe grab one. Miro to do flowcharts or a calendar thing would be good. See what's in your trash. Maybe you trash something by accident, and just check to see how much storage you're using because it's always interesting to see. So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to do that. Okay, we're going to wind down. We're almost out of time. So we are going to, if you have any questions at this point, there's some great tools that you can spend time looking through. There's lots and lots in the marketplace. You can have fun with your emojis to organize there. Donna, do we have any more questions in the chat? You're muted. No.
Well, sorry, I was on mute. You answered Margie, so no, I think you're
We're
good.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do one more rating. So how do you feel after you've been able to do all this stuff now? Do you feel more confident? Are you a Michael Scott? Are you Stanley? You John? Are you the dance party over here on the left? I mean, well, I guess it's your right. We hope you're a little bit better, more confident with this because that was a lot in less than an hour. Got some 3s and 4s, so that's good. We do have one-on-ones help that if you have specific questions, we can sit down with you, make a help ticket or contact the Office of E-Learning. We are going to record this and put the slides out for you. So if you want to go back and follow a little bit closer, you can. There's also a whole website on Google Stuff. They have all the answers and all the up-to-date stuff. And we are also going to continue offering more Google trainings throughout the semester. So the next one is going to be about Google Docs, because there is a lot that you can do with those. And we are going to, if you have any questions or you need a help ticket, submit it and we will get back to you. And we are just about, just a little bit early on time. So we thank you for coming and we'll send out the recording in just a little bit.